Are you a believer in good? Do you love it when the good guy wins in the end? Then Charity Matters is just the place for you, where modern day heroes overcome incredible obstacles to save the day with their amazing work. Welcome to Season 5 of the Charity Matters podcast. I'm Heidi Johnson, nonprofit founder, lifelong helper, and your host. I've been interviewing the helpers for over a decade with my blog, and I'm so excited to be sharing these inspiring conversations on our podcast. Join me as we learn the challenges and stories of innovators, entrepreneurs, and modern-day heroes who set out to solve the problems of humanity. Loss is something that all of us deal with at some point in our lives. But what we do with loss and that grief is really an entirely different question. Today's guest, Beth Thorp, is no stranger to loss. But when you hear her incredible journey of what she's done with that in the creation of the Mitchell Thorp Foundation, I think you're going to come away inspired, excited, renewed, invigorated. You're not going to want to miss this. I am so excited to have our guest, Beth Thorp, here today, the founder of the Mitchell Thorp Foundation, to share her amazing life story and journey with philanthropy. And welcome, Beth. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Heidi, for having me. It's a pleasure.
We're really excited. Well, let's just kind of jump into the deep end of the pool and talk about what the Mitchell Thorp Foundation does.
Well, we certainly make a great positive social impact with the Mitchell Thorp Foundation. We are a public 501c3 organization, and we support families with children with life-threatening illnesses, diseases, and disorders by providing financial, emotional, and resource support to them. This came to us for this philanthropy to my family through my son. It's in his honor and his name. That's why it's titled Mitchell Thorp Foundation. His name was Mitchell. He was my firstborn son and beautiful young man, 4.0 student in school, loved to play baseball. He was known for that. His father played for the Dodger organization at one point before he was succumbed to an injury. But that's where kind of baseball kind of runs.
Go Dodgers.
Go Blue. Yeah. It kind of runs through our family. We are a little nuts when it comes to baseball season here, but well,
I'd love to hear about, because I think and I don't mean to interrupt you, but
okay.
I think it's fascinating that most people start on a path and it has nothing to do with philanthropy. It has nothing to do with where they end up. And I love sharing the meandering path and the crazy story. And usually it involves, I don't want to say a lightning bolt or a jolt, but something pretty significant that takes us off the course that we were originally on to do this work. So even though I totally interrupted you, please tell us, because we obviously know your organization's name for Mitchell, but tell us the journey that of Mitchell and your family and how you got to this place.
Moment. Yes. Yeah. Like my husband was, like I said, played ball and then succumbed to an injury and then went into the business world. So he was always in the business fitness industry for years in sales and marketing and VP of organizations of different companies. And I, on the other hand, was in the fashion industry and doing my thing here and working as a stylist and an image consultant here, working with many corporate clients and human resource development people.
I used to be a personal shopper. I love that. We do have a lot in common.
I know. So that was our life. And it really was. My son at the age of 13 came home from school with very severe headaches. And you're like, okay, what's wrong? As any parent, you're like, well, maybe you're coming down with the flu or something. So, you do the next indicated thing, give him a pain reliever, go lay down. And then as days went on, he kind of got a little better and then went back to school, but they couldn't concentrate, couldn't focus, and was all starting and driven through head pain until one day he came home and he just kind of collapsed in the front yard, which just totally frightened me. And I'm, crying out to my husband, come quick, something is seriously wrong, right? Because there was, as any mother, we know our kids, we just know there's something not right here. And so you go to the doctor, and then it was really a rude awakening to, I would say, our medical system, because, you keep doing the next indicated thing as a parent. checking off the boxes, going to the doctors, and then it gets worse. Then he ends up in the hospital and they run tests. And the first hospital stay, he was there for 3 or 4 days running tests, and things kept coming back negative normal. So then you're like, okay. So then you're trusting the doctors that, all right, I'm not the doctor.
But your child's in pain. Something's wrong, right?
Yes. So we get home with him on that first hospital stay, and yet he wasn't 100%.
Right.
And then you're like going down this path. And to fast forward for your audience, this was like now a 5-year journey of chasing pain, chasing, trying to find a diagnosis, and doctors scratching their heads, trying to figure out what it is. And it was a season of chaos. It was a season of fear and anxiety and all those emotions that
and watching your child suffer. There is no greater torture. There's no greater torture for a human being than watching their child suffer. I mean, that, and to watch your child suffer for 5 years, that's just an unimaginable pain of a different level. That's just heartbreaking. Heartbreaking. Yeah. And it was heartbreaking. And you're right, very gut wrenching at many times, that brought us to our knees just in sobbing prayer to Lord, where are you? You know, why haven't you answered our prayers? What is going on here? So you're just really reaching out. And we were very faith-filled people, and always had a strong walk with the Lord. But this was a season of testing your faith. You know, we all go through it at some point in time in our lives where the rug gets pulled out from underneath us and things change on a dime, and you're not expecting it at all. And it's like, where is your strong foundation? Because if you don't have one, you're going to crumble. And we've seen so many people who fall into situations like us, that what our foundation does now is statistically 75 or close to that, 75% end in divorce or separation, because the stresses of dealing with a medically critical ill child or a child with severe disabilities, and they just separate. It's just too much. It's just too much. Yeah. Right. So what was the moment? So you lost Mitchell. Yeah. And what year did that happen?
This was again we lost him in 2008. So it was 5 years prior to that. And the community here came out for us in a huge way back then. And I think back in 2008, social media wasn't even around. The only thing that was out was MySpace. If you think about it, it wasn't that long ago. Remember?
Right. Isn't it crazy?
I'm dating myself, but there really wasn't.
No.
And then how the progress we've made with that. But
sad news travels fast.
Yes. And then Mitchell's story ended up in the Union Tribune, and so it was just getting out there in the community, and they came out and really wanted to help us. And they created a walkathon to help us pay off our huge medical bill that we came out of one of the hospitals up there in LA. And that's even with great insurance, mind you. So we just wanted to, that totally changed us and humbled us. And it really was also in my deepest pain of grief. Again, I
mean, losing a child is just it's a hole that cannot be filled.
Yeah.
It just.
Yeah. And it was a strong calling, because for me, literally that calling in my spirit, and for me as the faithful woman, I heard something deep within my spirit resonate through my mind. And I knew it had to have been God speaking to me, because he said, this is not the end. This is the beginning. And I just sat up in my bed, looked up toward the heavenlies and said, this feels like the end. What do you mean? What do you mean by that? So I'm looking up there like anyone, what? Where did that thought come from? Why would I think that? Where would that have come from? And literally was that same week, my husband was at the local church here, and there was 2 boys he coached in baseball. Both boys, unfortunately, had cancer. Again, families trying to make ends meet. And he really had that strong calling, we should form a foundation and form a bridge to help many families going through what we went through. So he comes home to tell me that. And I said, you want to do what? What? So, and then I had to realize, oh my goodness, maybe that's what he meant by that. This is not the end. This is the beginning. So,
and as you know, there is no loss without renewal. You can't have a fire without a fertile soil. You can't have an earthquake without a new city. You can't have a death without a rebirth. That just, we don't see it at the time. We don't know it. The pain is so big and it's so overwhelming. and the shock, and even just managing a community coming together. I know that when I was sharing to you a little bit earlier, when my mom died, suddenly in a car accident, our community rallied in just unimaginable ways, as I know you know. And I feel like if I spent a lifetime, I couldn't pay them back.
Right.
You feel, and not that you owe them anything. People do it because people are good. People are so innately good.
Yes, they are. And it's, like, that's what's so strong and wonderful about community. And I'm very big on that. And the foundation this past year won the Community Impact Award through the Chamber of Commerce here. So that's huge. So it kind of goes to show some of the things that we're being recognized for. But, here we are for your audience. So they can kind of fast forward where we are. We're now 14 years later, and we've given back over 3 million and counting back into the community to help, thousands of children and families later. And who would have thunk, right?
And can I just rewind a little bit, Beth, because before we even get to your impact, which I know is obviously huge. So you have, you two both have this simultaneous epiphany almost in stereo somewhat. And you decide to start the foundation. And these two baseball players kind of triggered it for your husband, and you had your moment. But then when anyone starts a business, because this is a business, no matter what people want to call it, it is a business, and fundraising and raising money to help people is very, very, very hard work. There are challenges. And I think in the beginning, we get these signs that we're on the right path and doors open and things keep happening. You're on the right. You feel that momentum, that calling, the flow, whatever people want to call it, God, spirit, things just happen. You can't explain that make it easy kind of in a way. And then it gets a little harder. So you get some challenges along the way. So talk to me a little bit about the challenges that you faced, besides the fact that you're grieving and you're trying to start a business to help people. Exactly. That in itself is an enormous challenge.
Yes. And people think, it's easy to go, let's just start a nonprofit. But it's, like you said, it's a business. And when we didn't really know, because our previous lives were in something totally different. So you have to obviously do the right things of filing the paperwork.
Right.
For us, you have to partner with people that are good in things that you are not. Yes. So for us, I say surround yourself with people who are good in governance. So you have to have all your bylaws put together. You have to have your code of ethics. You have, these are things you're like, when you never started something like this before, you have to start from ground zero, and all these things have to be put in place. And then you have to create your mission, vision, and value statement. And then you have to then find people who are committed to your mission.
Right.
And develop a board. So any nonprofit needs a good board. And I would recommend for anyone who wants to try and do this kind of work, find people who have a passion or a heart for what you're doing, and that they can also see the impact, the social impact that'll make in the community. Because in our case, we needed to bring on very active board members. And that means you just can't sit on a board and do nothing. So they have to
No, you cannot. That's not part of the job.
Oh, yeah, because otherwise they're not going to be part of our, because starting anything takes a lot of work. So I usually say, it takes so much drive and that entrepreneurial spirit to make this happen, and the perseverance. And you really have, for us, it was a God-given vision that we could not let go. And that was like driving us forward like a steam engine.
So talk to me about that for a second. And I always say to people, the bucket's heavy. You still have to do you still have laundry to do. You still have to go to the grocery store. You still have life. You have other children that you're raising. You're grieving. They're grieving. Your husband has a business. You have a business. Life doesn't stop just because life stops, unfortunately. And now you're starting a new business together. So like when you think about the enormity, we're looking back, but at the time you just go because you're called. But what fueled you to keep going in those moments when you're thinking, what am I doing? Like, how can I
many of those moments. And usually,
of course you have,
you're shaking your head. Usually they say, and it's so funny when you start a nonprofit, they would come up and say, you made it past the 5-year mark. And you're like, what? oh, you're like, that's what the outside perceives it as. And so I realize that, okay, so so to make it a substantial nonprofit that has validity, that's going to stick around.
Right.
I kind of see where that came from. And so I said, well, yes, we have. Through a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, we've made it. And here we are still standing. So, it's so funny when you hear that from other people, but it's important to understand in any nonprofit, and even ours. I mean, to me, transparency is huge.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of nonprofits can be run very shady, and that's where it ruins for a lot of us,
right,
who don't run it that way. So I highly recommend for those who are doing any type of nonprofit for one, we're a public 501c3. All your financials have to be on the up and up, and we're rated on the platinum level with GuideStar, which is something that needs to be proudly presented on any website. So you got to make sure those things are surely there, because you are after donors. We're all after the same money.
We all chase it.
I have to say, we're all out there fighting for the donations. We do events. We have about 2 or 3 events a year we do through the foundation to raise funds. But then again, you have to partner with people who come on board with us. You have to write grants. You have to seek these sponsorships, and it's an ongoing driving the business.
Absolutely. It never stops. And I think that one of the challenges that people don't always realize is, as entrepreneurs, which we are, is we start a business that relies on the kindness of others. And it's kind of not the easiest business model. And it's incredibly difficult work. It's incredibly difficult work. You're selling stories, and you're selling a vision, and you're selling hope, and you're selling humanity. And for us, I think sometimes, we don't just go to bed at night like, I didn't make enough pencils in my pencil factory today. We think about the children and families that can't pay their bills or can't get to the hospital, or can't, or are struggling because they don't have the support with their child being ill. I mean, these things are not light things that we take on. We are helping humanity, and it's enormous, and it's a lot. But I do think it's important. You mentioned grants. Oh, the word grants, and impact. And I think that impact is such. I have such a love-hate relationship with that word, because you can't measure when you keep a family together because you've given them some resources for help. You can't measure that. There's no measuring that. You can't measure love. You can't measure time you get with a child because you have some extra help that enables that to happen. That's not measurable. And yet we're required somehow to measure these things that are immeasurable in our work. So talk to me. You mentioned earlier about some of the funds you've raised and what you've done, but talk to me about the impact, whether it's numbers, stories, both, whatever you think it is, and not in a grant application, but just,
the
what
overall scheme of it when we just did our annual report. Just for me, because you go in the work day in and day out, and I don't focus on the numbers, but when you have to put the annual report together, you're like, I went, wow. We've actually given back over $3 million already back into the community. So that's like, oh wow. We've helped over 1,000 plus people and children and counting. That's a huge, we just started, for me, one child. That started with one child and one family at a time. And that's how it started. And you just kind of kept one foot in front of the other, kept, going to see these families and, scared out of their minds like we were, you go to these, and just being that light in the dark for them is huge for us. But the impact was huge. In 2020, we were the last event before COVID hit. We had our huge 5K run walk down here. We call it our Warrior Spirit 5K run walk, because these children and families are warriors fighting for their lives every day.
Beautiful.
So that's why we call it that. My son, we often called him our warrior son, our warrior boy. So that's the name of it. So literally, that was in February 2020. March, the whole world shut down, right? So that's a huge pivot for many nonprofits, and many of them didn't survive and come out of that.
No, they didn't.
So we were very diligent in, refocusing that direction and where to bring in income and resources to keep yourself afloat. It was not an easy time for any of the nonprofits, much less businesses. Look at all the businesses that went under.
So hard.
Very difficult.
100%. Yeah, I'm glad that's behind us now.
Oh, yes. But, I have to say one positive thing that came out of COVID was it finally gave me a time to shut down from working so hard and put my efforts into writing our book, which I came out in 9 months ago, because many people over the years kept saying, oh, you Beth, you and Brad need to write your story. You really need to tell people what you went through, what came of it, what God did. But you keep hearing that enough. And there have been pastors here locally that speak from the pulpit about our story, just to inspire others of how to persevere through trial and how God knows how to take a tragedy and turn it to a blessing to others. But if we weren't obedient to listen and just to follow, we could have very easily turned our cheek and went back into our previous life.
Right.
But
you can't come. Well, I guess you can. And I think maybe that's why we have these conversations. I shouldn't say you can't come through this unchanged or unscathed, because things happen to people every single day. Mm-hmm. And only a handful of us, there's 1.6 million nonprofits in the United States. So 1.6 million of us, and I'm not saying other people haven't done great things with their tragedy, but of the people I've interviewed, 95% have had something really tragic happen. Something has happened that has fueled them, and they use that pain for good. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, is why I think it's so important that we have these conversations, to give people hope, to see there's light on the other side, to see there's a bigger purpose and plan for all of us. And we may not know it at the time when we're in a dark time, or we've had loss, or we're struggling with something, but there is a reason. Something comes out of it. If you look and you're open to it, it's there. And I think for the people, I don't want to say they're rare few, but the people like you that and your husband that go out and help others and use that as a beautiful legacy for Mitchell and a legacy of his life. There's just nothing greater. And to show other families that, I just think it's everything to me. That's why I have these conversations, because I just believe so deeply in it. And I think people need to have hope like that. And I think it's so great that you wrote this book, and we're going to talk about it a little bit more at the end. But I want to ask, since you can't be an entrepreneur without being a dreamer and having a dream. Mm-hmm. So if you had a big dream for the foundation, what would that be? What's the big dream?
Wow, I thought about that question. And the big dream, well, the beautiful thing was, since the release of the book, my publisher now put me in touch with 2 film producers who we are now, as we speak, writing a screenplay for it.
Yay!
So we want to take it worldwide, because they said, right now we're just California based. We want to build different chapters throughout the United States, but you can only help so many families. You have to bring the money in to support that. Does that make sense? So if you want to get bigger than you are, what's going to support that for you to do that?
Right.
And then we do see ourselves what we call scaling up for that. And we're getting ready for that right now as we speak, just to get prepared, because it's just so a beautiful thing to see what just happened from that. That's just been we just started a month ago, and we're in the midst of taking it and the book into an adaptation into script. So beautiful. We'll see. So next time we'll see what happens, and that would be my dream, to see it on film, to see it, the story out to those who need to hear it, see it.
Right.
And it's going to be an inspirational story.
Well, of course, I'm talking to you, Beth. It's pretty obvious that you're inspirational. If there's one word, you're definitely inspirational.
Well, I want them to leave the audience. There's so many movies out there you don't feel like, inspired or want to get out there and I can do this, right? If they can get through it, I can get through it, right?
And that's exactly why I think it's so important that we share about these conversations, because there are amazing angels walking among us every single day. You are obviously one of them. And I think that people just are so, like you said, they get caught up in their life and they're just in their zone and they don't see it. And I feel like I'm here to just shine a light on all the angels, like, look over here, look what they're doing, look at this. And a movie and storytelling is so important. And I think it's so powerful. And I think that would be an incredible legacy and financial boost for the foundation to expand. Yahtzee. So talk to me about just kind of life lessons. I mean, you cannot go through that kind of journey and that kind of incredible loss without learning some important things along the way. So what do you think some of the big lessons you've learned since this all began in 2008, 2009?
There's a lot. I thought about that. There's a lot of lessons that I had to learn. Well, I think if anything for me was to stay strong in my faith, because faith doesn't always take you out of the problem. Faith takes you through it. And faith doesn't always take away the pain. Faith's going to give you the ability to get through it. And then faith doesn't always calm the storms of life, gets you through the storms. So it's really, for me, it was just hanging on like a cat with the claws when I felt like I wasn't hanging on, but just staying strong in that and to just persevere and never give up.
I love that. And that is just the way life is, right? We just get taken off course, but it's really God's way of redirecting us, saying, you need to go this way.
This
and
way. You're like, wait a minute.
No, I'm going over here.
Isn't that what I thought was going to happen?
Yeah, this isn't the plan.
Yeah, isn't that funny how that works? And it's just being obedient to listen to that. And for those who are listening that might have lost a loved one or can't even fathom of doing something of this nature, but I just say start with simple steps by just honoring them. Find something that your loved one loved or did and honor them in some way, whether it's plant a garden in their memory if they like to garden, or whether it was something that, anything that your loved one loved, that's the first step of kind of getting unstuck and moving forward, because you don't have to be defined what happened. That doesn't necessarily define you. Yes, it was a horrific thing that happened. But the question is, what are you going to do with that pain? And how are you going to release it and let it go? And for my husband and I, there was a whole nother subject matter of dealing with grief and coming out of it, because it was not a thing that goes away. It never goes. It's always in your heart.
It's there.
It's always there.
It's always
bleeding
there.
Has stopped. It's left a scar in my heart right now, but there's never a day you go by without thinking of your loved ones.
Never.
So you just have to find ways to move forward, to honor them in some way, and that brings you comfort, and knowing that that'll bring you peace. I would say for your listeners, whether they're believers or non-believers, just something that will help you move forward. The big one for us was forgiveness. And we had to go through a whole therapy session of forgiveness and releasing those. Like, for example, releasing the doctors and forgiving all of them that couldn't figure it out. Find the answers. Forgiving people who said things that they shouldn't have said. Family members who did things that they should. The list can go
all
on.
sorts of stuff happens, right? Yeah. Right? There's a laundry list. That's a whole other episode, Beth.
Oh, it is. But it is. But it's an area that people get stuck because they're rooted in bitterness and they can't get past it. They got to release it and let it go for you to move forward to see the light.
I agree with that completely. And I do think there's so much that happens in loss, and it's so overwhelming on so many levels, from people coming and bringing you more food than you know what to do with, to just this onslaught, to then all of a sudden everyone's gone. And there's just levels of it that are so hard. And then the emotional fallout and the grief. It's just a lot. But like I said, and we all go through it. I don't think anyone gets out of here unscathed. I don't think there's a human being on this planet that is not going to experience loss in their lifetime. And we all have different ways of processing it. But I'm certainly glad you processed yours the way that you did for all those that you're helping. So just tell me how you think you've changed in this journey. Think you're the same person that you were?
Oh, well, yes and no. I think what changed me the most is that I I have no control over anything. If you think about it, we really don't have control over anything.
No, we don't.
And as much as we want, especially my type personality, want to control and make things work the way it should work, it doesn't happen. So the big lesson was surrender. I keep having to surrender every day. It's not my will, but his. It's just always like, it's not. And when you can learn to do that, it's a beautiful thing to see how people come into your life just like serendipitously. And you're like, what? It's like those divine appointments, keep surprising me, so if you live in that type of thing. So that is the one changed me, is giving up the control and keep surrendering. And there was one more that was a big one in my brain that it just kind of left. But
I think I needed to hear that today, Beth. I think that was a gift for me.
Oh, yeah.
I needed to surrender.
And
I need to surrender.
Really had to learn to do that, is give up control, because we don't have control. If you think about it in life, we think we have control. We want to have control. But when things get out of control and spinning out of control, that's where you're like, people, the anxiety level goes up. They just don't know what to do. They're in a panic mode, and versus stepping back and going, okay, this is not me. There's a higher plan. So as an entrepreneur and a visionary, especially in leadership, I'm always viewing things from the 30,000 foot level, up high where it needs to be. And stop getting, sometimes we get so minute. And what I tell people sometimes, especially dealing, just for an exercise that my therapist actually helped and we had to learn to go through. She said, do not look too in the past, because that's the area of regrets, the what ifs, and the you shoulda, coulda, whatever. And don't look too far in the future. That's where anxiety lives. Of the panic, everyone's moving forward in their life. My son isn't, that's where anxiety lives. She just really helped us to understand to stay in the moment, this present moment, just like you and I are together having this wonderful conversation. This is all we have right here, right now, and to constantly put our focus there.
And that's why it's called present, because it's a gift.
Yeah. Oh, you're right. That's
it. And it's reminding ourselves every day to be grateful and find that gratitude and that joy, which go hand in hand in those moments. So speaking of joy and gratitude, tell us how we can support you, and tell us a little bit about your book and where we can buy it. I want to hear a little bit about the book. Obviously, we've heard a little sneak peek about your story, and hopefully the movie to come. But tell us, we're going to put it out there, but tell us a little bit about the book, where we can buy it, and then where we can support the foundation.
The book is titled A New Creation, Finding Meaning in the Midst of Tragedy. And you can find it really anywhere online or in bookstores. Most people, I don't know how you buy your books. Some people go online and buy them and get them shipped to them. Some like to go to the Barnes and Nobles and wherever bookstores. And if it's not on the shelf, you can place an order for it. Or you can go right to my website, anewcreation.org. And I will personally sign a copy and write an inspirational message.
I need to get one.
Yeah. And inside the book, if you buy a book, you get a free ebook. And that talks about that at the end of the book. And then also that's about the book. People want to know about the foundation. They can just go to mitchellthorp.org. That's MITCHELLTHORP as in Paul.org. And there they can see everything we do under the foundation. If they know of a family or a child that's suffering that really needs some assistance, they can see everything we do. They would just need to go on, click on MTF Children. There's a download button of downloading an application to apply for assistance. You can also get the book there on the Mitchell Thorp Foundation as well under the More button. It's
terrific.
Shop now. So you can get it in both places. So there's many ways to get it, but
and are you guys on Instagram and all that good stuff?
Oh yes, Instagram, all the Facebook, Instagram, Twitter,
all under Mitchell Thorp Foundation
as well. Mitchell Thorp Foundation, as well as A New Creation. So I'll have to send you all my handles.
Oh yeah, we'll get them. We'll tag you. We'll tag you in all of this. But for anyone listening that wants to just follow you in your journey, buy your book, And go see your movie when it comes out, because we're just gonna say it. We're gonna put it out there.
We're gonna put it out there to the universe.
Yes, we are.
It's another huge undertaking, a big project. It doesn't happen overnight. So again, baby steps. People, it takes baby steps. Each step leads to the next thing.
One thing leads to the next. Exactly. You finished my sentence. And Beth, I cannot thank you enough for just bringing us joy and light and inspiration and just so many beautiful things to think about today, and sharing your journey. And what a beautiful legacy you have created for Mitchell. What a beautiful legacy. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Such a gift. Thank you. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Charity Matters podcast. I so enjoyed talking to our guest, Beth Thorp, about what it takes to start a business that truly changes people's lives. I think her comment about loss, saying this is not the end, this is just the beginning, was so inspiring and true. To learn more about modern day heroes and entrepreneurs like Beth, reach out to us or visit us at charity-matters.com or connect with us on Instagram at Charity Matters. If you enjoyed our conversation, we would love it if you shared this with your family and friends. And please don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. But more than that, thank you for caring, for believing in goodness, and for being a part of our movement. You're exactly what the world needs more of. Remember that together, we can make a difference, one small act of kindness at a time. Charity Matters.